Chapter 5, A Trip to the Rainforest. Before the sun sank below the horizon, Juan Daniel walked over to the edge of the forest in his town that led to El Imposible. He stood in a small clearing and looked straight up into the leafy canopy above him. Faint rays of sun filtered through and made a spotty pattern on the ground. Juan Daniel tilted his head to listen to a blue-crowned motmot, the national bird of El Salvador, that was flying nearby. He caught a glimpse of the bird's orange throat and blue wings before it disappeared into the forest. Juan Daniel heard a rushing sound and headed out of the clearing toward it. As he got closer, he realized what it was, a waterfall. As the sheet of cascading water came into view, Juan Daniel grimaced. He was imagining his poor frog sitting underneath the waterfall. I don't think he'd stand a chance being hit with all of that water, Juan Daniel thought. He saw the trees and bushes at the base of the waterfall and thought of what Miss Peters had said about the frogs hiding themselves inside leaves. He walked toward the tree and rubbed the waxy green surface of a leaf. Suddenly, he noticed a sparkle of light out of the corner of his eye. He looked closer. The light reflecting off of a bead of water on one of the leaves made the drops shine like a tiny jewel. Juan Daniel watched the water slowly slide down the leaf and make a tiny splash. He reached out to catch the drop in his hand. That's it, Juan Daniel realized. I need to make something that will drip just enough water onto the frog to keep him moist. Now I need to figure out how to design it. Chapter 6, Modeling a Membrane. The next day after lunch, Juan Daniel sat inside the pupuseria, wondering how he could design something to help his frog. His sister Marcella walked in and noticed him looking intently into the frog's bowl. "You're still thinking about that frog?" she asked. "Well, he's a champion just like I want to be," Juan Daniel answered. "Here it is, the middle of the dry season, and he was out in the bright hot sun away from his natural home. But he was hopping right along. Before I bring him back to the rainforest, I want him with me at our last game." "You'll win again, I'm sure of it," said Marcella. Juan Daniel smiled at her. "I hope so, but there is one more thing that I have to figure out before this frog can help lead us to victory." Marcella raised her eyebrows in a question. "This frog is supposed to live in the rainforest where it's moist. Out in the field, it's hot and dry. So what are you going to do? Give him a teeny tiny glass of water?" Marcella giggled. "No, frogs don't drink water like we do. I learned the other day that they absorb it through their skin, but I bet I can come up with a way to get water to him," Juan Daniel said. "I've already started imagining some ideas." "You sound like a scientist," said Marcella. "No, like an engineer," Juan Daniel said. "They use science to help them design solutions to problems, just like this one." Juan Daniel began telling Marcella about his talk with Miss Peters and his discoveries in El Imposible. Then he grabbed a piece of paper and started sketching out a bunch of the ideas he'd imagined. "What I think we need," he said as he continued sketching, "is a type of membrane." "A membrane?" Marcella asked. "Well, a model of a membrane. It will separate the container where the frog lives from a container filled with water. The membrane will let some water drip through, just enough to keep the frog moist." "I get it," said Marcella. "It'll be as if the frog lived under our water tank and we poked a couple of holes in it so he'd get sprinkled with water." "Yes," cried Juan Daniel. "That's exactly the type of thing that we need to do. Only we have to make sure he's really just showered, not flooded. If there's too much, I bet the water would be gross after a few days of the frog living in it. And we can't change the water too often since we only get water from the well twice a week." "It sounds like you're off to a great start." Juan Daniel turned and saw Miss Peters standing behind him. "It sounds like you're off to a great start." Juan Daniel turned and saw Miss Peters standing behind him. "Oh, great, you're back," Juan Daniel said. He introduced his sister, then turned back to the pictures he had drawn. "I have some ideas, Miss Peters," Juan Daniel said, "but I'm not exactly sure what to do next. Maybe you'll want to use the steps that I find helpful in my work. They're called the engineering design process. First, you ask some good questions and imagine lots of possible solutions, just like you're starting to do already. Then you think about what materials you could use, make a plan, and create your design. Finally, you see if there's any way to improve it. Juan Daniel looked from Miss Peters to his lucky frog. That sounds like a good idea, Juan Daniel said. I think I can do that. I'll help you get started, said Marcella. We could test some materials that we have around the house to see how well water moves through them. What about one of the sponges from Mama Teresa's kitchen? Yeah, and I have an old t-shirt that we could cut up, said Juan Daniel. That's great, said Miss Peters. I know you two will come up with something wonderful. I wish I could see it, but I came to say goodbye and wish you luck. I leave for the university tomorrow, and I won't be back for a long time. You're leaving? Juan Daniel asked. His eyes darted around the pupuseria. It was a Salvadoran custom to give a guest something before they left. His eyes lit up as he spotted the dried gourd hanging from the colorful string on the wall. He pulled it down and handed it to Miss Peters. This is tecomate, he said. In El Salvador, we use these to collect water. I know it's not the best way to get water to my frog, but maybe you will remember me by it. Thank you, Juan Daniel. I will. With a smile and a wave, Miss Peters was out the door. Together, Juan Daniel and Marcella tested sponges, fabric, a plastic bag with holes punched into it, and some other materials that they found around the house. They tried putting some of the materials together to see how water traveled through both of them. When they thought they had figured out a combination of materials that worked well, they decided to leave them set up overnight to see how much water had traveled through their model membrane by the next morning. After a few improvements, Juan Daniel thought his model membrane and the frog would be ready for the big game. But the question is, thought Juan Daniel, am I ready? Chapter 7, Champions. Chapter 7. On the morning of the big game, Juan Daniel woke with the sun. He peered out the window and saw peach rays of light reaching across the sky. He could feel the fluttering of nervousness in his stomach, but also excitement and determination in his heart. Juan Daniel wandered outside and started running drills. All he could think about was Futbol. Before he knew it, it was time for the game. He picked up the frog sitting in a bowl under the membrane he had designed and headed to the field. Juan Daniel's team kept the game tied until the end of the first half. Then, two well-placed kicks from Jose Eduardo's team left Juan Daniel's team 2 goals behind. As halftime began, the team gathered at the bench. Juan Daniel glanced toward the frog, who was still hopping around, cool and comfortable, under his newly designed membrane. We need some luck now more than ever, thought Juan Daniel. Carlos's voice rose in a panic. What are we going to do? In just 5 minutes they've scored 2 goals, he squeaked. Guys, cried Juan Daniel, we can do this. I know it. Guys, cried Juan Daniel, we can do this. I know it. Juan Daniel paused for a few moments as an idea clicked in his mind. You know, I learned about this thing the other day, this process. Maybe it could help us here. We need to ask, imagine, and plan. What are you talking about? Asked Carlos. We're going to win this game. I'm talking about how we'll do it, not just by using our legs and feet, but also by using our minds to outsmart the other team. We need to ask some good questions. What patterns have these guys been running all day? Up the right side to Angelo. They're fastest forward, answered Javier. Yeah, and every time we're too late to block the pass. We need to imagine some ways to defend our goal and then come up with a plan. Is everybody with me? Juan Daniel placed his right hand in the center of the circle of teammates. Carlos stuck his hand on top of Juan Daniel's, and Javier, Cesar, and the rest of the team followed. After they'd come up with a solid plan, Juan Daniel's team ran onto the field with newfound determination. Jose Eduardo's team looked shocked as Juan Daniel's team scored a goal within their first 3 minutes back on the field. Then they scored another to tie the game. But with 1 minute left, Juan Daniel found himself still 8 meters away from the goal, with Jose Eduardo guarding him like a hawk. Juan Daniel got control of the ball and took off running. Jose Eduardo was close on his heels. Juan Daniel felt a heavy hand on his shoulder, just like last week when he was knocked down and hurt. This time, he guarded the ball closely between his feet, ducked down to get out of Jose Eduardo's way, and continued to run up the field. Without Juan Daniel there to push on, Jose Eduardo lost his balance and went flying toward the ground. He landed just in time for the dust from Juan Daniel's shoes to billow up in his face. Juan Daniel shot the ball forward. Goal! Juan Daniel's teammates ran to him, whooping and cheering. That shot was amazing, cried Carlos. The plan really worked. I can't believe we won. Juan Daniel smiled at him. There's just one more thing that I need to take care of. Meet me at school early tomorrow morning, okay? Juan Daniel grabbed his bag and the frog and headed off toward home. Chapter 8, Freeing the Frog. The next morning, Juan Daniel sat outside his school with the membrane he had designed and the frog. On a piece of paper, he carefully drew a diagram of his frog container and membrane, placed it in an envelope, and addressed it. Miss Kristen Peters, Facultad de Ingeniería y Arquitectura, Universidad de El Salvador, San Salvador, El Salvador. As he sealed the envelope, he saw Carlos walking toward him. All right, I'm here, Carlos said. What did you want to take care of? It's not for me, said Juan Daniel. It's for our lucky team mascot. Juan Daniel led Carlos to the back of the school. Leafy canopies stretched above them. Juan Daniel carefully loosened the membrane from the top of the frog's ball and watched with approval as the frog hopped out and headed toward a low leafy bush nearby. You didn't want to keep him? Don't you think we need him to be our mascot in the tournament next time? Carlos asked. Nah, Juan Daniel said. He definitely inspired me, but next time I think we'll do just fine with our determination, our football skills, and a great plan.